Okay, hello all. I'm Zoltan Harangi-Tóth from Hungary. I will be the first to talk about wargaming in the Central Eastern European region, especially wargaming in Hungary. So, in the next slide, you will see my agenda. So I have a less busy slide, so it will be easy to follow me. I will go through. There will be an introduction. I think the introduction is important because you can get some information on the perspective of how and why I talk about certain topics. Also, I will go through the wargaming history of Hungary, which is now we are in almost 200 years. Now it's just 150 something. So more than a century of wargaming in Hungary. It sounds very fancy, but you will see the details later. I want to talk about the current state. So at this point, it's very important to notify that I'm not representing any organization. I'm just sharing my perspective and sharing my experiences at the unclassified level. And also the bright future. So the expectations, some ongoing and things that are there to share information on for you to get an overview and maybe some hopes. I don't know if it's the right word to say that. Okay, there is a question and answer section, but feel free to ask the questions or type into the chat. So I'm happy to get into those. Okay, let's start. Okay. First of all, it's not a promotion video of me or a promotion slide show. It's easy to find pictures of war games, and I'm usually on them. So I share those pictures because they are unclassified. They're available on the internet, so you can find them. So maybe if you try to look the other things on the picture, I would appreciate that. But you will have to deal with me at this point. So what's my background? I'm originally an infantry officer, deployed to Afghanistan a couple of times. So I have all these infantry from the tactical perspective, so the infantry experience, which means I'm pretty much straightforward. So try to be on point as much as possible and not to waste resources and time. I'm also a military historian, so it's a long story short. I always ask the question why, and you don't do that in the infantry. So to ask the question why is really the job of a historian. So why this is how it is now. So you can find in books or in manuals or in the archives. So I learned history, especially Cold War history. This is my specialty. Also, I spent 7 years at the Ludovika, the University of Public Service at Budapest, which is Hungary's only military higher education institution. It's part, we have a military faculty, we have a police faculty, and we have multiple faculties under a state-run university that trains everybody who will work for the state, from diplomats to military officers. I teach at all levels, from cadets up to the general staff course. I also participated in curriculum and syllabus development, so like developing courses and so on. Now I'm away from the Hungarian military for a year. I serve as a NATO contractor at NATO JWC, Joint Warfare Center in Stavanger, at the Wargaming branch. I'm the technical advisor, one of the technical advisors of the branch. And before that, I was a wargame designer and developer at JWC. Also, last but not least, I'm a hobby wargamer, and I was a hobby wargamer before I became a professional wargamer. So I'm hobby wargaming for 30 years, from card games to board games to miniature wargaming, so everything. Okay. If there is no question, I will move on to the wargaming history. So when I'm talking about Hungary, and wargaming, I'm talking about mostly from mid-19th century, from the mid-19th century up to nowadays, and in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire context. So because the whole wargaming in Hungary started as not as natural evolution of something, but as almost as an obligation. So the whole starting point was the Battle of Königgrätz in 1866, when the Prussian army decisively defeated the at the time Austrian army in nowadays northeastern Czech Republic. So in the next year, it was 1867, the Austrian-Hungarian Compromise, when they really created the dual monarchy. So we can say that this decisive defeat on the battlefield of Königgrätz was the starting point of the Hungarian and the regional wargaming in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. Why? At that time, it was very common to do a battle analysis as detailed and as much as possible, as fast as possible after the battle, to go into the lessons identified and lessons learned. So those ones in charge for the lessons learned figured out that, okay, so there is for the Prussian officers, there is a quality advantage. Their knowledge is more deep and they are better trained, especially the staff officers. So staff officers and general staff officers. And one of the reasons for that, as based on that analysis, was their decades-old wargaming experience, so Kriegspiel experience. So from the mid-19th century, the 1850s, in Vienna, there was a staff officer school. It was called the Kriegsschule at the time. So they introduced wargaming as part of the general officer training. So the general officer training was a very interesting thing. The general officers, the general staff officers, GS officer corps, was an elite corps in the army. It was an army inside the army, and it was not easy to get into that organization. They had to apply for the very limited positions for a 2-year-long education at the Kriegsschule, and it was like a very rigid application process. They had to pass a couple of exams and so on. So the young first lieutenants and young captains applied for a position for the general staff course, and if they were accepted, they learned wargaming and they participated in many war games. So, but for them, it was like a specific job. So, for military officers in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, it was like many different levels, like the national military, the combined military of the empire, and so on. But it was like a commanding officer or a staff officer branches to follow. And wargaming in the 19th century and in the early 20th century, it was something like, especially the general officer war games were like social events. So at that time, it was a very well-developed officer club system. So they had very fancy officer clubs, they were like in the middle of the social life of the officer corps. And all the newspapers and the representatives were there. Sometimes aristocrats participated. It was almost like a play in a theater. So it was very popular. We have lots of articles from early 20th century newspapers to get into the details and the struggle between them. So the picture represents that. If we move on, and we get into the details how this staff officer training looked like, and then general staff officer training looked like. It was a 2-year-long, I will not say that anymore. So 2-year-long course. It was all with military history, battle analysis, then campaign analysis, then the whole war. It was all about the war and the theory, and then the practice was at 2 or 3 different levels. This is what I call the 3 steps of education. First of all, it was it was a specific thing that is very close to nowadays TTXs, so tabletop exercises. It was a vignette-based discussion around a specific situation that was on the table. So they call that, if I want to translate it from Hungarian, it was it was a discussion, but about the application of the theory on practice in a specific scenario. So it was like an application applied discussion. Sorry. So it was the first step. And then when they were like experienced enough, they get confidence in that, they moved into wargaming, and it was called Kriegspiel at that time, of course, in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire also. So it was a very classic Kriegspiel type of wargaming. You can see an example picture. It's from the interbellum period, when you have a situation and the written text around the graphic visualization of the situation is the guidance and guidance for the officers on training. And then the next level was to go on to the field, and what we call now do staff rides. So it was a 3-step, then a discussion, a TTX something, then a classic Kriegspiel type closed war game, fighting against each other, a multi-sided war game. And then they went to the field and they trained to how to give an order or how to move forces on terrain. Before the 20th century, it was with horses and so on. After that, it was with radios and more advanced technology at the time. So the importance of the order, so the order to give an order, it was the central part of all 3 steps. So for general staff officers, they had to be proficient in like giving orders in oral or written form. So they expected them to give their orders to follow a specific format during wargaming. And it was the same system, so we can say this Prussian-German Kriegspiel type wargaming up till the Second World War. After the Second World War, due to political and security reasons, the Soviet military remained as an occupying force in Hungary, so they changed a lot of things after the Second World War. But they haven't started a whole new wargaming process. So there was a short period when the practice of the interbellum period, so between the 2 world wars and the Second World War practice was used. Okay, so how Soviet type wargaming look like? It's usually the most questions I get about how that wargaming was. How was Soviet wargaming? How was the Eastern Bloc wargaming look like? First of all, it was all about if you see like arts and science of the military leadership, it was all science. So the wargaming there was 2 types of wargaming. All of them were heavily based on, especially from the 60s. So we can talk about Soviet type of wargaming in Hungary from the 1960s, when they reformed the whole military, the PME, the professional military education system, and the whole planning system to resemble more to the Soviet doctrines, and actually they just copy pasted and translated the Soviet manuals. So it was all about mathematics and force ratios and application and time-based planning. So that's why I say this is why I said that it was all about the science of leadership, which means really staff work. The other one, so the planning. So the art, it was more about the role of the commander. So in the Soviet type of leadership and military leadership, everything was all about the commander. So the commander made all the decision. The higher the level, the more the freedom he had at the time. It was only he had. So the commander decided everything, and the staff went into to phrase the orders and write the orders and send out the orders and so on. So the commander was the central part. So wargaming was mostly focused on the training of the commander to prepare him into situation with time jumps and different scenarios and different vignettes. it was less education and less training. It was more focused on like an exam for the commander, so to test his performance. And it was less an how to say, it was less creativity in that. It was all about problem solving. So it's very hard to refer Soviet type of wargaming when you compare it to Western type of wargaming, either Kriegspiel or the NATO type of very broad wargaming that we have now. So most of the exercises at that time were heavily scripted, and it was less free play. Wargaming was a thing when they had some free play, but how much free play and how much creativity that you can you apply when you have all your superiors watching you like during an exam? So Soviet type of wargaming was really scientific and a more stressful method than it is now. So I can phrase it and cut it short like that. If we move on, Hungary joined NATO in 1999, but it took some time to apply all the new methods and new doctrines and new manuals. So for the early 2000s, when the late 90s, where I started my military career, so it was a mix of old, especially at the military academy, old documents and new documents, which were like translation of different NATO manuals. Some of them were US, lots of them were British. So it was a great mix of everything. So at that time, I usually tell the story to my colleagues that when I started reading maps, it was all the red, the friendly forces, because of the old habit. So and our teacher said that, okay, it's good to learn that, but you never know when you need it. So it was just an anecdote, so don't take it too serious. Anyway, so from our NATO, when we joined the NATO, we started to apply the military decision-making process at the tactical level, and COPD or OPP at the operational and tactical level, which are still the main NATO planning methods. And of course, course of action wargaming, which is MDMP or step 4 at the tactical level, which I participated. The picture shows me as a battalion S2 playing the red forces, and I tried really hard to gracefully lose. So the course of action wargaming, which is course of action analysis, which is a walk to talk through of the courses of action of the blue forces against the red forces. There is also a limited opportunity to free play in those due to their due to their rigid methodology. But these were my first experiences in the 2000, after 2010, as a battalion staff officer. Okay, where to find details and where to find more information about the wargaming history of Hungary? And I can say, like, in general, Central European wargaming, of course, in the military history archives. In the military history archives in Hungary, you can find all the unit and general staff level war games. There were like core war games, medical war games, logistics war games, many types of war games. There were like key leader war games for generals. It was called the generals war games, so the Fogo war game. And you can find lots of manuals, especially from the 19th century up till the First World War. It was more about, some of them were in German. In the Ludovica Academy, so the first national Hungarian military academy from the late 19th century. It was in Hungarian. The manuals, the PME books were in Hungarian, especially between two world wars, when it was only in Hungarian. So all of them are available in a digitized format. They are very useful. Also, I have a book on the picture, which you can find more details about the topic I just talked. Okay, let's see the current state. So I know it will be a bit military heavy, because this is where my experience are coming from, and mostly. But you will see that it's a more broad and more whole of a government and more whole of society and economy thing. So the Hungarian Defense Forces (HDF) plays war games, or played war games in the past at the general staff level, usually strategic level war games, wargaming the plans, like course of action wargaming, or more to get some insight. We have a transformation command in Hungary, which is in charge for among many things, to the application of the NATO ACT directives on wargaming and warfare development and all those things. So we played a couple of war games, and they played a couple of war games on getting insight of the future and some systems and so on. Also, weapon systems and the application and organization are important for research and development and innovation, and in the defense industry. And of course, the military does a lot of planning, and a lot of planning comes with a lot of courses of action, and course of action analysis at the strategic and the operational and the tactical level. So I think it was nothing new at that point for you, but let me go into the details on the PME side. So this is my perspective, and when I'm talking about my background, this is my perspective. I think PME is the primary training audience to have war games other than course of action wargaming. You can train future wargamers there. You can shape their perspective, or they can get some insights into certain topics or into the methodology of wargaming. So especially in higher education, at all levels, from the cadets up to staff officers and some staff courses, some junior staff courses, up to the general staff level, and up to the future leaders of the Hungarian Defense Forces. So it's not a one-man show. I have very good colleagues that I'm working with. Some of them are civilians, some of them are in uniform. So it's a team effort that we do at the Ludovika University of Public Service. We have some elective courses. I also have a couple. It's for cadets, especially at the last year of their education, when they are familiar with the tactics and the basic tactics at the company platoon, or some information about the battalion level tactics. But to get to some confidence in decision making, it's a good point, and it's a good opportunity for them. Also, we have analytical war games as required. So the university, we can deliver if there is something specific at the unclassified level. And also, we have elective courses for security studies students at the strategic level to analyze conflicts and to understand indicators and the trends in conflicts, and also at the tactical level because like security and defense policy students will have a chance to go to work for the Ministry of Defense. So it's a better understanding how the military works. So it's more military. The conflict analysis and the conflict studies are more analytical for them. And also staff officers who go back to the staff college, so OF2s, OF3s, so captains and majors, will have a chance to participate in an elective course. It's all about war game design. So they design a war game in small groups, and they deliver that war game for their colleagues. So it's highly popular. So it's very popular, and it seems easy to get credits for playing a war game and designing a war game, but it's all about education and well defined learning objectives. I use but my colleagues also use a lots of commercial off-the-shelf war games to modify them for the specific audience. And also they are good, it's the last bullet point, to we get lots of requests for recruitment. So to deliver a war game, usually a historical, a military historical topic, it's a less well-known topics for high schools. They're very interested. In Hungary, we have programs and high school students can select courses or on military like home defense and those topics. So they have a chance to play a war game. They are usually like 22 to 45 minutes, or more like 20 to 30 minutes war games on a military history topic, and later discuss it, how they see it, and to improve their knowledge on certain topics. And also other and for the future military academy students, it's a good opportunity to see how these things work, and they are very popular, I can tell you. Okay, I have a couple more slides. I try to catch up with the schedule. So we have the Hungarian government, especially the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, training their diplomats at the department head, sometimes at the ambassador level, or to junior diplomats, to have those wargaming experiences, more or less about learning about some regions and some conflicts and some security issues. Again, law enforcement, disaster management. Disaster management is all about humanitarian aid and how to handle specific situations. And I'm very happy to say that the financial sector, some banks in Hungary, and the big corporations, from research and development perspective up to more specific topics, are interested in playing war games, and they're requesting more and more war games. And then business education, we have the Corvinus University. I have a good colleague there who's also a wargamer, so they deliver war games during business education at the bachelor and the master's level. So what's the current state in the regional cooperation? So we have very good connections in Hungary with Poland. Hello, Pavel. I don't know if you're here already. With the Czech Republic and their defense university in Brno, in Slovenia, Maribor, and some of the multinational units. So Hungary is well interconnected into the Central Eastern or Central European wargaming. So we have PME programs, so our students can go into the Erasmus program or an exchange students, or us professors can go to see how other war games work. Especially during international conferences. We had 2 international conferences in the last 5 years. And then it was the Defense Day 24, when in Warsaw there was a big war game. So you can find more information on that on the internet. So and these things, usually what happens in the Central and the Eastern European region, are less well known in the big wargaming communities, especially in the UK and the US. So I still think, and it's my perspective coming from my background, that the US and now happily the French and the British wargamers are more well represented in international wargaming than, for example, us from our region. It goes back to military culture, the strategic culture, the number of think tanks using wargaming, and the number of wargamers that those countries have. But still, I can tell you that there is an improvement in the region. So I would be happy to tell you more, but at this point, it's just a teaser about what's going on and how it can be. And that goes to my topic, that how many wargamers do we need? So, for example, Hungary, a country less than 10 million people as a population, how many wargamers does Hungary need? The military needs wargamers. Military delivers mostly course of action wargames. So you have the staffs to do that. They are trained to do that. They don't need a specific skill set to deliver that. And also the other thing is, how many wargame designers do you need? This is usually one of the bottlenecks. So the wargame designer, from my perspective, and the analyst are usually the bottlenecks. Because for a wargame designer, you need a good knowledge and a good overview of all the models, methods, and tools. and you need some kind of creativity. So it's very hard. So creativity is very hard to learn. So, but it's very easy to eliminate if somebody is creative. So it's very hard to eliminate that, especially in the military environment. So this is how military works. So uniformization is against creative skills. So it's very hard. So, but you need designers, and you need to train your designers. It's always a question to have civilian, like hobby war gamers, and turn them into professional war gamers. Or if you have like a military or a business or somebody else from the military or the business, to train to be a war gamer. So I usually recommend a good balance of those. So you need geeks, and you need more people with all their feet on the ground. Sorry. Okay, wargame analyst is usually an overlook. We're always talking about designers and developers and event management and all the time, but we usually don't talk about how important wargame analysts are. It's again a specific job to analyze a wargame, to improve it, and if you don't have someone to capture the lessons identified, you need your analyst to capture that for you during especially an analytical wargame. So you can train a wargame analyst, but it's very hard to train somebody to be creative. From my perspective, the bottleneck is the analyst and the designer in wargaming. And I'm talking about wargame teams. So you need wargame teams of at least 3 people. So an analyst, a designer, and if you are lucky, have a developer. And if you are very lucky, you can have an event manager who can provide you all the information and the facilities and everything. So if you have like 3 or 4 or 5 people, so now you have a wargame team with different skill set that harmonize well with each other. And how efficient they are. How many war games do they need to deliver? You can design a war game in hours. You can, if you have a bright idea, you can design a war game in develop a war game in days. But do you have somebody that produces it for you? Like if you need 10 maps, who will print those maps, who will graphic design those maps, and so on. So how many war games do you need to deliver? What's your market for war gamers? In Hungary, we have a small market, so it's still an emerging tool set. So more and more people are aware of the importance of war games and the added value, let's say like that, added value of wargaming. But still, we get the questions always. So you can see some staff officers trained to course of action, how to course of action wargaming in a more playable form. So do we need to switch to digital? Does digital more efficient than analog or manual? Does it a natural next step after a manual wargame to develop a digital capability? These are the things that you need to understand and analyze when you talk about your wargaming community and requirements, and especially like AI, how AI can improve your wargaming. Do you need AI to improve your wargaming, or do you need the players to put their cognitive effort and collaborative learning effort in a PME environment for those wargames? I not necessarily say AI is always all the time mandatory and digital is always better than manual wargaming. Not just because I'm an old-fashioned wargamer, but I can see the cognitive process behind that. So to play a manual wargame and to communicate with your peers or your partners during the wargame. Okay, what's the bright future? Internal capability building. Do we need an internal wargame capability, or do we need to outsource that? The military usually needs an internal wargaming capability. Do other organizations also need an internal capability, or they can outsource it? So if you outsource, you lose the control over the product. If you you lose the experience that comes after multiple executions and multiple war games. But you can save the time and the costs of building expertise. So the Hungarian Defense Forces are interested in building a large modeling and simulation center. It's currently under development. So wargaming can be and should be part of that, especially for the military. So at the university, Ludoviko University of Public Service, we are developing a concept for more methodological approach to teach courses of wargaming and to deliver unclassified wargaming, and especially, as I said, the develop the methodology and the manuals and all those handbooks, more likely handbooks. And it's more to coordinate the efforts, because at the university we have the police there, we have the diplomats, the administration, the future administration members as cadets and staff officers there. And also for innovation, the defense industry runs a couple of wargaming problems. They are quite new, but they are developing well. Also, international cooperation. This is the future. Hungary, a small country, with the neighbors. In 2 hours, I can go from Hungary to the Czech Republic. Slovakia is even closer. In a couple of hours, I can get to Poland or to Slovenia to cooperate and work with our partners there. So it's very easy, and it's natural to have international cooperation. Also, I'm very thankful for the US, British, and the French wargamers who I worked with previously, and I get lots of support, and they had lots of inputs how to help, and especially the Germans also, and so on, who help to improve this internal capability building process that we have in Hungary. So we have this process. So we started professional wargaming, especially I started at the university at 2020. So it's a 5-year-old process. So it's well developed. We already know the requirements, what we need. We need to take those steps, get the right funding, the right people, and the right things in place. And everything is on track at the moment. Okay, these were the slides I prepared for you. If you have any question, please let me know. Okay, there is a question. How wargaming was handled before 19? Okay, Fort Fed in a separate group of specialists. Okay, it was usually based, so from a PME perspective, it was run by the teachers at the Ludoviko University. It was not a special group. They had wargaming, they had wargamer officers, but some of them were like part of the ops team or the intel team, or some of them were like military historians. They had lots of historical staff rights run by military historians. And there was always someone with them, because all staff officers had to learn Kriegspiel, the methodology. All of the staff officers who became teachers at the Ludoviko University have an experience in that. So they used their own experience and their own training to combine it with the operations, the intel, or the military history. So that was one thing. At the other part, in the big army, in the military outside of PME, it was all about staff work. It was part of their training plan, how to improve their staff capabilities. So there were no specific wargaming courses, and there were no specific wargamers. At the Ludoviko University, they had their Ludoviko Academy. Sorry, it was Ludoviko Academy. Now it's a university. So the Ludoviko Academy, they had the obligation to write articles in the academic journal or in in international military journals about their research topics. So the professors there had to research something, and some of them started to research wargaming. So we have those articles. So I can say there were like no dedicated wargamers per se, as we say, but there were researchers of wargaming and they used their knowledge to improve the wargaming capability at the academy. So this is my perspective. Okay, I will go back to the slides. I think you're talking about these slides. So it's an urban war game for cadets in their 4th year. it's all about decision making. So this game, actually, these are boxes made by my wife and me during a Christmas break. So this represents a Middle Eastern or Central Asian village. So they had objectives they had to occupy during this game. They had to occupy one of the buildings in a certain amount of time. And the miniatures are, I think, they are 3D printed, or if not, they are from a certain website and just painted blue or red. So so their topic was to get to the certain to building and clean that building to achieve as an objective. And during the game, the situation was changing all the time, and the learning objective of this game is to handle the unexpected, the unknown unknowns. And there are some known unknowns like injured and losing time and so on, to slow down. So for the guys who are playing this game, they play against each other. It's fun, it's dice rolling, and it's everything. But after that, we analyze that what was the decision point they missed. And it's usually the decision point is when to change the plan, when to request reinforcements, and so on. So is this, guys, there's a game with blue or red? So in the first iteration, when we tested the game, it was all painted in the right color, so uniform color, and the right background, and we had like very nice terrain and so on, but it was confusing. So that's why we decided to go to blue and red, and these box buildings, just to simplify everything, to take away some of the cognitive burden. So in this way, we can analyze, okay, so how far you are from your objectives. Is it time to change your plans? Is this a time for a branch plan? Do you have a branch plan? How a branch plan would look like? So this is all about reassessing the scenario as the game flows, because it's usually in this is my experience, we executed it a couple of times, it's hardly achievable, the original objectives. So it's all about them when they reassess the situation, or when they follow the order as written. So it's about leadership and decision making training. Yes, it's two questions. Yes, the university is open. So one of my good colleagues, András, is a civilian. He's a security policy analyst and the Far East specialist. He's a civilian, so he's a creative guy. He's there. He's teaching the same students that I teach, usually military, from a military perspective, and he's teaching more policy and more analytical perspective. I mean, he's still also using games like OWS, Operation Wargaming System, from the Marine Corps University. But still, how does these games have an impact on policy making and so on? Is there a job market? So I can tell you that, like for the cadets and the staff officers, these are elective courses that they need to. They're happy to choose. But on the other hand, for the civilians from the faculty and the international relations students from other faculties and our security and defense policy students, these elective courses are one of the most popular courses, and we have lots of young ladies participating on those. So a surprisingly large number. So it's very, very popular, and I can tell you that we have more civilian wargamers because there are more courses for them actually, based on their education preferences, to have analytical war games. For cadets and staff officers, it's more about decision making and leadership. So the focus is a bit different, although sometimes we use the same game with a different perspective. So it's easy to modify because you have all the components and everything. So for civilians, it's more like indicators, trends, and analysis. For military, it's more about decision making. Yes. Is there a job market for them in the Ministry of Defense? Yes, and they can use it in the business as business analysts. So there is there is a very limited job market because we have very limited jobs for wargamers. So I remember when I was a young company commander, not that young at that time, I had to move to a new position because there were like young guys coming up, so coming after the new generations. So it's the same in wargaming. Wargaming, if you spend a lots of time in wargaming, you get more experience. It's an experience-based profession, you can say that. But if you're like occupying a position for too long, you just block the way for the new generation of wargamers. So it's a problem with a limited and a pretty much closed market. So we train wargamers, but we don't let them go away. We try to get them back, and I think there is a slide on that. Yes, to run PhD programs for them. So from next year, my plan is to, when I go back to Hungary, to start as a PhD supervisor for wargaming topics under the leadership, decision making, and analysis group. So there is a limited job market, but I can say that nowadays English is not a problem for most of our students, especially in the international and security policy. So we have a good opportunity based on our connections to get our students to international organizations like NATO internship and so on. So there is a job market. In Hungary, it's limited, but it's not limited only to Hungary. Mm-hmm. Of course. So, yes. So if I understand the question well, Hungary, yes, military alliances, we can say Hungary was part of military alliances. Sometimes it was more willing, sometimes it was less willing, especially during the 20th century, but less willing fully. There are multinational wargamings, and there is a need, of course, for the military, especially if you develop for the military industry, or if you want to develop your own national defense plans, or if you want to buy into expensive weapon systems. So there is a need for standalone wargaming capability in the military, and it's similar. For example, not just in the military and not just military alliance, for example, for diplomats. So you need to train your diplomats. We have lots of athletes going to international organizations, from the International Olympic Committee to other. So they have negotiation, strategy building kind of games. I don't really want to call them war games, but they are really war games. But more about building negotiation strategy or building a business plan for corporate audiences and so on. So it's a bit out of the military, but the military wargaming experience you can combine and use that. So definitely there is a need for independent wargaming capability, if I get the question right. Okay. It seems that I answered all of your questions. So thank you for the opportunity. It was a great chance. So thank you for the invitation, and thank you for your participation. If you have a question, you can search my name, and I forget to put my email address there. So this is my mistake. You can search my name. There is only one guy, and there is my son, who's a young athlete. So if you see a handsome young guy, it's not me, but otherwise, you can find me at the web page of the Ludovica University of Public Service. So feel free to write me an email, and I will be happy to answer that. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, our other speaker was unavoidably detained, so we're going to offer a separate recording as soon as we make arrangements for that, and you'll all get an update to help with that. So we want to thank you again. We want to thank Zoltan for a wonderful presentation, and we'll hope to see you at the rest of the convention. Oh, come on.
Oh, sorry, I'm still here. I'm just
That's
looking
okay.
for a link.
It's still acting like we're streaming. It's supposed to auto shut off, so bear with. I did that.